A statistician by qualification, Abade Oluwaseyi has evolved to becoming a resourceful educator. His journey into the world of knowledge transfer started in his National Youth Service days, where he served his nation as a mathematics teacher. He soon realized his newfound love of building and molding the minds of the future leaders and decided to pitch his tents there. He obtained a BSc in mathematics from the University of Lagos and also has a PGDE in the bag. He's presently running an MBA degree program with the University of Lagos and is the co-head teacher at Meadowhall Junior School, Lekki, Lagos. He's focused and self-motivated and has a passion to use education as a tool for societal transformation. His desire to see young children learn has driven him to continually seek 21st century pedagogy. His strong background in statistics and the use of numbers laid an indispensable foundation in his extensive analysis and use of data for educational improvement by educators at all levels. As a lifelong learner, he has always been passionate about professional development, and this has seen him become a regular trainer, facilitator in several capacities, including educational conferences such as the annual Meadowhall EduCamp held in Lagos and Port Harcourt, which hosts hundreds of professionals yearly, just to mention a few. He has also served as a human capacity development consultant with a number of educational institutions such as the Lagos State Ministry of Education, Ready Set Work Initiative, Okmar International School, Port Harcourt, Keith Station School, Lagos, and many more. Ladies and gentlemen, make welcome the host and convener of the Impact Educators Summit, Mr. Oluwaseyi Abade.
Rotimi Eyitayo has distinguished himself as a passionate catalyst for change. His approach is a rare combination of talent, experience, and research, which has made him one of the outstanding entrepreneurs of this generation. A young and dynamic speaker, he has facilitated several retreats and strategy sessions for organizations both within and outside Nigeria. He is a splendid Nigerian strategist with outstanding ideas in workforce activation, teamwork, and strategic planning. He is currently the MD and CEO of Team Masters Limited, which has been in existence since 2006, creating and adding value to schools, students, teachers, and parents. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Rotimi Eyitayo to the Impact Educators Summit 2020.
Good day, Mr. Rotimi Eyitayo. You're welcome to the Impact Educators Summit 2020. Finally, we have you here with us. But for the benefit of those that may not know you and are meeting you for the first time, do us the honor of introducing yourself to us, sir.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Rotimi Eyitayo, and I'm the lead consultant at Team Masters Limited. I'm a management consulting firm. I am an education development strategist and also a business consultant. I work with individuals, organizations, and government to translate their desired objectives into actual outcomes. And I do this using coaching interventions, training interventions, strategy retreats, and team bonding opportunities as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So, do you have any mentors, and do you mind sharing a few of them with us, sir?
Yes, I do have mentors, although most times I don't like to call them the word mentors because it transcends beyond contractual intervention as to do this, do that. So I think they are go-to experts that I work with. For the sake of confidentiality, I might not be able to mention their names because they're a bit quite conspicuous people within society. But I have role models and I have associates that I'm very excited to mention their names, and they're actually across sectors. So it's not just within the education sphere. So I have role models. I have people that I also engage from time to time from level of support, and people who are doing stuff remarkably in the quest of what I do. So there are many across both within Nigeria and beyond. So I have Jimmy Okubanjo, an individual that I totally respect. That's like a mentorship experience with her. I have people like Peladrote. I have people like Steve Harris. There are people across the walks of life. I have Bankole Williams. These are people that from time to time we rub minds together. We like to call ourselves colleagues, sometimes we call ourselves brothers, but you'll be shocked about the tremendous wealth of knowledge and exchange of value that comes when sometimes you just have opportunity to share ideas with them, to rub minds with them, in some cases to work with them as well.
Wow, that's very fantastic, sir. Very fantastic, sir. Okay, sir, you're a growth strategist who works with every sector, including the banking sector and all of that. However, you spend most of your time, if not all of your time, in the education sector. Why did you decide to pitch a tent in the education sector, and what has kept you going in that sector all this while?
So like you said, pitch your tent. So as it is, everybody must have an area of domain, because one thing about execution is that you must not just dwell on expertise. Expertise is one thing, but then it's a place of dominance is another. So while I've been able to meet cross-sectoral responses in terms of delivering value to institutions like banks, institutions like corporate organizations, I decided to pick a sector of dominance, which is education. And the reason behind that is so that I'm able to nurture a place of reference where I can have proof of result, not just because of expertise. And it's a place where I picked. Education actually was an interesting place where I noticed the gap, but not just to exploit it, but to explore possibilities around it and to ensure that it was a field and it was a sphere where you're able to have collective expertise, which also informs my adoption or my approach, where I'm not just doing something that can make me do business and enjoy myself and get profit, but I also look at possibilities of raising people who are also, promising. They have visions, they have expertise of some sort, and fine-tuning it with them, you are able to bring a kind of an army unleashing to the sphere to take it to greater heights.
Wow, that's very fantastic, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So what would you consider the greatest challenge you have faced working in the education space in the Nigerian sector?
The greatest challenge would have been a challenge of acceptance, and which actually most times is the same with aspiring or emerging experts. Starting out and with the methodology that I came to the sector with, a lot of people were holding on to status quo, which was more or less like, can there be any form of solution from anyone who did not directly study education? And so that was a bit of a challenge, because people felt that there was a need to ensure that we gag people who probably are just coming to disrupt the system, because they feared that maybe their position or their influence was going to be hijacked of one way or the other. So, but then with consistency and then my kind of person, I didn't come in to get validation. I was already self-validated, and that was the reason I do what I do. So I wasn't looking for meaning, that's why I did it. But I already understood what I wanted to do. So all I needed to do was to wait it. It was not necessarily a palatable thing in some cases, especially when you run a business and from your projections, you thought you would have been able to go this mile or this far or this further. But then because of the peculiarities of the people, some things were like at a snail speed. But with time, we were able to weather that. So that challenge of acceptance, I would say, has been a major aspect of it.
Thank you very much, sir. You recently started a new project called the Good News Education Show, which streams every weekday in the mornings. What inspired that concept, sir, and how do you get to do it, going on live every morning? Please talk to us about that, sir.
Okay, I like the way you said it. I started a new project. Like you're saying, it's already looking like it's past tense because another new project is on the way anyways. So one of the things that inspired that is ability to demonstrate and model change. So from time to time, especially due to this period where a lot of us have had to review models, a lot of us have had to, talk about what's the future of the sector, what's the future of schools. And this had been inside of me since 2 years ago to last year, but I was trying to make it in a grand way, But then COVID-19 struck, and one of the things I said was, I haven't told people suggestions on what to do, and I haven't provided projections as to what we should expect. It's necessary for us to also participate in the growth of the sector. So if we talk about collaboration and we give a very good view and presentation about collaboration, is one thing to define something, is another thing to deliver that. So if we talk about collaboration, and a lot of people have been hurt, I decided to say, let's demonstrate what we teach and then model it. And because what you model is easy for people to copy, what you model is easy for people to get inspired, And hopefully they use this as a tool to explore other areas, but not just to do the same thing. So that's why we said, let's come up with a good morning education show and make it a show that empowers people, but engage people as well. Make sure it's informative and make sure that it equips people on the go. And then, of course, learning is every day. So why not make it every day? After all, a lot of people are at home, and pretty much that time of the day, they're not doing so many things at that time. So we decided to deliver value, but I made sure it wasn't a Rotimi Eyitayo thing. So there have been people I've worked with in capacity of training, in capacity of speaking, and in some capacity of mentorship. So I brought most of them together and said, guys, let's make ourselves like analysts, right? We're not going to teach the people, but we're going to inspire the need for people to learn. And we're going to treat topical issues. And while we do that, we hope that we're able to help some people, because some people might not be able to register for a training and be a part of it. But through that show, empowerment and engagement and equipping can take place, which was what gave birth to that. But how have we been doing it? I think that we've just been drawing strength from each other. We are not so much of superstars, we are still human beings. But we are driven by a goal, and the goal is tied to an agenda. And I think that agenda is something we visit from time to time, that it's possible for us to break new frontiers. It's possible for us to not just talk about new normal in terms of the change in lifestyle, but also a change in the sector.
Wow, that's a very, very fantastic idea. And collaboration is something we're definitely missing in the education sector. And like you said, it's a good thing to model this thing so that people can see it and take it from there. Thank you very much for the great initiative, sir. Okay, so let's go into the title of your topic today, which is From Coping to Improving to Accelerating Through the Pandemic. From coping to improving to accelerating through the pandemic. Can you give us an idea of how bad this pandemic has affected the education sector?
Well, an idea would mean, let's look at what is obvious, because if it's visible, then I think it's helpful. But then we come back in with figures. So if we want to know how bad the pandemic has hit the education sector, I just ask, who's going to open their school right now? Nobody. So if we have over 30,000 private schools in Nigeria, that can give you a clue that 30,000 schools are shut, and I mean literally shut. So that can tell you the effect of it, because every school, no matter the grade of the school, has a value chain. And so we have academic and non-academic workforce members, right? And then there are many things that evolve around the school business. Do you get what I'm trying to say? All those things have been affected. So if you have 30,000 times the value chain affected, then you can see how bad it has hit. It's not just that, but let's look at it in terms of other areas and other spectrum. So we're not talking about in terms of just having employment, but let's bring it back to livelihood. And so for every school that is short, there's a tendency that some people's income have been affected directly or indirectly. Either they are not earning as much as they used to, or not earning at all in some cases. And so that in itself, if you do the numbers, then you see how bad the effect has been. But then if you want to transpose that, let's also look at the potential danger, because you know that it's the world of survival of the fittest. So immediately the desirable is not available, the normal human phenomenon is to make the available the desirable. So think about a situation where some expert, some professional, somebody who's dedicated 5 to 10 years of his life doing something within a teaching profession or doing something within the education space. And then when survival issue hits that person, there's a tendency that the person look outside the current profession. We already have workforce deficit, expertise deficit, teacher supply deficit in education. Now think about what the pandemic would have done. There is possibility that some people will go to sell something, and when the schools are fully back, they're not coming back to that job. I don't know if that paints a picture.
That paints a very vivid picture, especially when you're putting numbers and figures to these things. It paints a very, very vivid picture that some people may not have considered. So it has a ripple effect. Apart from just the children being out of school, it also affects other sectors, other chains of the economy. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so looking at the business side of education, like you've just talked about now, how would you recommend that school owners withstand this shock of the pandemic, considering the fact that, the traditional models of income have been largely affected? How can school owners and school leaders withstand this shock of the pandemic?
Well, I think the challenge might be not to say withstand, because if you withstand the shock, you are expecting that there's some level of hope, that something in the short term will change. But let's tell the honest truth. You actually have to get school owners to do what we call scenario planning in this situation. And in some cases, you must think like, what's the worst case scenario? So if already one of the major models of your earning and income is affected, the normal thing for schools is to make projections, not to wait and weather the storm, but to go through the storm. That's where you hear the word eye of the storm. You need to understand that if you study the sailors or you study fishermen, they are always used to things like that. That when they are out in the sea and when the storm hits, they can't say they want to roll back. In fact, the waves and the tide will be so much against them that it can destroy not just what they caught, but the ship itself. And so schools must understand that the business model is the first thing that has to be looked into, not just the operations. There's so much emphasis on school operations. So because the gates have been closed, we feel that the operations actually defines the entity. The school entity has not been closed. So the federal government or the state government's lockdown was actually something that affected the operations, a part of the entity. Now, schools must begin to ask themselves, what part of our entity can come alive, or can we give expression, understanding that school has not been shut down, education has not been shut down, it's the school operations that has been shut down. Because of course you see visibly, we are having a lot of people having online schools, online engagement, and it's a school brand in some cases. So are we saying that is not a school? It's not possible to say that's not a school. But we need to get to a point where we are not just thinking of opportunities, but we need to get to a point where we take thinking of opportunities and move straight to harnessing. When we think of opportunities, let's have online learning. That is still looking like a soft landing. We need to be so deliberate and so bold that we don't just look at something nice to have, but we need to start defining what we should have. And this is the best time that we can accelerate the development within education space. Why? Because it is now a catch-up syndrome that is now being affected. We cannot catch up with the rest of the world. Placing it in context of our challenges and saying that this is our own homegrown solution to what we face. And once it is solution according to us, you cannot say it's benchmark against standards, because standards is relative.
Very insightful comment, sir. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have spoken a lot about the school leaders and school owners. Let's speak about the teachers themselves. How can these teachers diversify and reinvent themselves so that they remain relevant as educators? Because the truth is, as the education space has opened up now, there's a lot of competition even for the teaching industry. So for example, what knowledge that was solely kept to the teachers before, suddenly you can go to YouTube, for example, and you find a video talking about the same thing the teacher is delivering, or you have a website that delivers live lessons as well. So suddenly the teachers have become threatened as well. How would you advise teachers can reinvent themselves even during this period, sir?
That's a very good question. I would like to say this, that there is really, and you can quote me anywhere, there's really no competition, especially when we're talking about our own market. We are living and playing like we're in the land of the blind. If you follow numbers, you understand what I'm trying to say. As long as people do not become resourceful, you cannot say we are competitive. So we have a lot of teachers. Let's say, for example, Lagos State. Lagos State, I'm sure, has between the range of 200 to 300,000 teachers. Now, if you look at that number and you look at the household in Lagos State and you look at the families in Lagos State, you look at the learning and education needs in Lagos State, you realize that we do not even have enough teachers to go around the education demand. And let me play with you with another figure. Lagos State has 1,700 public schools, 18,900 private schools registered. Unregistered, we are not even talking about that. Now, those schools have been operationally put on hold, meaning that they were a convergence. Some schools have 500 children. Some schools have 60. Some schools have 100. Some schools have 250. The truth about it is the fish has now become a big-time harvest. What would have made a school have a huge bottom line is available to the itinerant teacher. So it's only a call to resourcefulness. But when we begin to see many people become resourceful, then we can talk about competition. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? In fact,
yes,
we are having deficit that is now making people to look outward to the global space to see who can take care. And until when we begin to see invasion of global competitors, then we can still say there's no cause for alarm. But of course, how long do you need to wait? Because these people have statistics. Zoom recorded a phenomenal spike in user subscription just to sign up, just for COVID. The same thing. I'm sure you would have recognized Google came up with something to rival other applications. The same thing with Microsoft. Everybody's, even Facebook, even LinkedIn, everybody's tweaking their model, even Instagram. And the reason is because they are getting to see that the numbers don't lie. Now, we have never appreciated numbers in Nigeria, and that's why we are not seeing it that way. If we get to the point where we begin to appreciate numbers, listen, the very first set of people that should not even pray for resumption should be teachers. But now, what do you hear? The reverse is schools are not open. That's why we are not eating. Listen, a genuine lot, a genuine percentage are suffering because there's nothing that can be done. However, I can tell you, if they can turn that hunger and pain into fuel, there's a huge market that the money some people have never seen before. Some teachers have never earned over 30,000 to 50,000 before. If they make themselves resourceful and practice consciousness, listen, they will earn the wealth they've been eyeing and being envious of big schools. Because right now, the guardian of the schooling system is the teacher, not the institution.
Right now, the guardian of the schooling system is the teacher and not the institution. Very fantastic, sir. And I really appreciate the way you put in facts and figures there. By training, I'm a statistician by training as well. So I get to do with a lot of statistics, and I really appreciate the data that you're putting in. And like you rightly said, it's quite difficult to get a lot of data in Nigeria. That is an aspect that we really lack as a country. There are many things you need to find out, and then many times you have to go into international bodies to even get data about things happening in our own country, which is very, very sad. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, sir, so you do a lot of consultations for school leaderships and school owners. Now, due to the pandemic, a lot of this leadership will be done largely remotely. So what advice can you give to school leaders and school owners on how to lead and manage their team from a remote perspective?
Well, I think one of the things that will define any leader or any school leader leading remote teams is you need to get your team's readiness. A lot of us focus on the doing at the expense of the being. A lot of teachers, a lot of staff, a lot of workforce need to be raised in the readiness. So there is a mentality that comes before the mandate. There is a mentality you must raise them to understand that working remotely is still working. You understand? A lot of people need to understand that philosophy, that if I'm working at home, does not drop the bar of professionalism, does not drop the duty of reporting and giving feedback, regardless of how little your task is, regardless of the shortness of time. Even if it's a task of 30 minutes that you're expected to turn in every day, work is still work. And when we get people to understand that at the mentality level, there is a readiness, so that when you now say, oh, let's begin to move people to the doing of working remotely, you are not going to be solving some issues that will just, take your time altogether. So you must work with the mental readiness, and then you must ensure that there's a command, there's a mandate, and everybody must understand that, look, this is what work is demanding of us. And that measurement You must be able to make it known that this is how we are going to measure effectiveness or measure delivery. And so it's not strange. Nobody's looking at that. What's the force? Are we not just online? Our service promise is at stake if we do not do what we're expected to do, even at this remote mode of work. So once you are able to do that, half of your work becomes easier. And then you must recognize that you must communicate without assuming. You must anticipate that there is a need for communication. And so if I was physically seeing someone I'm leading, I can read their body language. They can read my body language. I cannot expect them to think of it that they should know that Oga is angry. They should know that the boss is angry. No, you must be able to communicate, anticipate clarity, in this period, because a lot of people have not mastered emotional intelligence physically, to talk of mastering emotional intelligence online. And there are two separate, in fact, workplace dynamics has changed, So it's like you're almost begging the one who is led, and the one who is led is feeling, all of a sudden I matter, because everybody is not having a front seat. Nobody is behind anyone. The only thing is that your responsibility is to ensure that you inspire, create, and deliver the change that you want them to have.
The responsibility is to inspire, create, and deliver the responsibilities to them. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, earlier we talked about the business models that schools run, the traditional business models, which see that they have their income in cycles. So usually they have their income in 3 cycles, which are usually the terms in the year. Now, a lot of schools have planned their expenses and expenditure around this situation, but we have seen a situation where these have affected a lot of expenditure. So a lot of schools have gone into capital projects, maybe buildings of new facilities and all of that, in anticipation that at the end of the term, the new cycle will come in, the funds will come in, and we'll be able to continue with this project. But then we were caught halfway in the second term, and then plans have been changed. Some of them have started these projects on loans, but even if they are not running on loans, they have been set back largely as a result of the fact that this income didn't come in as at when due. How can they come out of this situation, sir?
Well, this is the time where we need to put to test all the gibberish sometimes we get to hear people say. We say 21st century skills. You must have creative thinking. You must have all those thinking. You must have all those. This is the time that we'll put it to test. Are they mere rhetorics? Are they actually things that we deliver in reality? Do we just resonate with it because it's online? Or does it come as a practice? Because right now, schools will now see the place of having a think tank in their school. You must begin to think on your feet, and you must begin not just to brainstorm, because the cost of brainstorming is time. You don't have time. Your bills are running, and then the sphere and the landscape is changing. You see, so a lot of schools might now see where they have missed it in developing their people. So you find out that the only superstar factor of most schools is their name, not their product. And when I say product, I'm not talking about the children. I'm talking about the workforce. You must have people in an organization that you can say, this is our mini project, our school within school. And sometimes those are people that will save the day. I know some exceptional educators who themselves have voices in a way. This is the time schools might need to diversify, divest in those people and say, look, the market seems to favor the individual. We will push the available funds for this purpose, not for you to spend. We don't mind you becoming popular. We don't mind promoting you, and probably you stop being a staff. But now we are partners in progress. We are on board of your organization. We can even buy up your organization. Imagine your school says that, you know what, name your price. We're going to give you 50 million. We're going to use this as a vehicle to bounce back in the short term, in the mid-term, and eventually in the long term. But you see, because we are not having TikTok, some solutions you will say, they'll say, God forbid. What do you mean? You know why? When solutions alarm an individual, it means their mind has not yet been liberated. It is so difficult for that thing to sit in. And once it can't sit in, guess what? You can't run with it. It's not because it's not in fine print. It's not because it's not in PowerPoint. It's not because it's not in graphics. Listen, if somebody tells you something that sits well with you, even if it's a sentence, you will run with it. But if it doesn't sit well with you, no matter how packaged it is, you will always have this tug, this tussle inside you. You are not sure. That's how it works. Now, imagine at an organizational level. But you see, when you don't see your people as developed, you will check that how can I put this much money in an individual, forgetting that what makes a school is not the building and not the name, it's the people. The workforce is what makes the school. But then if you feel it's too much to invest in 2, 3, 4, 5 people and create an agenda through them, right? Guess what? We are still going to get back to ground zero. So there's no way out for some people who cannot do something that seemed crazy, but they've never, after all, they are losing money anyways.
Wow, very, very impressive, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so would it be right to say that this pandemic has been a silver lining for the education sector?
I think this pandemic has been a blessing, not just a silver lining, right? It's been a blessing, but it also has been a revealer that we have been joking all along. Most of the nice things we've been saying in conferences and seminars, they have just been to tickle the fancy of the head, but it's missing in the heart experience. So this pandemic there's anyone that is going to be truthful to themselves, has shown us what we can do with the resources that we always anticipate and desire for. Because when people can't do anything with the little that we have, that looks like a crisis, when resources come, what will happen? Squander it. But you see, in the midst of it, a lot of people have found their voice. A lot of people are heading and getting the gold out of the pandemic. A lot of people are increasing their impact and milestone at a global level. A lot of people are causing disruption that will affect institutionalization of schools. But you see, a lot of people are doing videos that they are hungry and looking for rice and beans in the same pandemic.
Wow. In the same pandemic, really, really mind-disturbing. Really mind-disturbing. Okay, sir. The next question is, do you think that the government's response to the pandemic was ideal? And if not, what do you think the government would have done better, particularly considering the education sector?
I think we need to recognize that at certain times we ourselves, we see what government does. Government is always going to follow, number one, the numbers, whether they're objective or not. They will follow the numbers. We've never communicated the numbers to government, so we cannot expect government to take us seriously. And until it is their interest, we will not become priority. So complaining about what government does or not is really from our own end. Can we create a case for change and communicate the case for change? We can rant all we can on the streets of social media, but until we communicate a case for change before we are taken seriously. And they must see it in the place of numbers, because government gravitates to numbers. They think of election, they gravitate to numbers. They think of constituency, they gravitate to numbers. They think of people who elected and they gravitate to numbers. They think of party interest, they gravitate to numbers. So it's not enough to look at the terminology, education is important, but we need to recognize, can they see education as numbers? We need to get to that point. The response could have been better, especially to the people responsible for education. Ministry of Education, especially state-led, have been a bit tacky in their messaging. They've not been as proactive as they should be, and they allowed a lot of gaps in interpretation of so many things. So there they dropped the ball. Even at the federal ministry level, the messaging has not been quite okay. So you are hearing people not sure of things, and then you are hearing people saying, what exactly do we do? For a ministry, it is their role. This is the time where they shouldn't be sleeping. This is the time where regulatory functions should actually be seen, should be heard. We should be seeing them in and out of meetings, just like you're having the presidential task force situation room. There's nothing out of place to be having briefing every day and talking collaborative approach. You must talk consultatively, wide spectrum, engage people, postulate scenarios, so that at the end of the day, you are not just talking just so that it's formality. We need to open school. Everybody needs to know, and then we will not be chanting when we know that there shouldn't be. If we know that it's January, we won't need to go into the street of social media doing webinars or something we already know. And that's why sometimes they laugh at us, because there is no coercive effort. There's no coercion. They're not seeing us coming as a laser beam. So they just laugh and say these are people who are just passionate and blind. But you need to get to change your pursuit from being passionate and blind, but also to be precise. Precision makes a difference.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, sir. So there's been a lot of back and forth about whether schools should resume or not. What is your take on this? Do you think as a nation we are ready for our schools to resume, or we still have to wait a bit more? What do you have to say concerning this, sir?
The truth of the matter is there's a business principle that says follow the money, right? So if we speak about money from the perspective of the buyer, when we think about it from the perspective of the client, I would say that one challenge is resumption as at now might become more or less a difficult twist. So parents might not even send their children to school, even if right now schools are told to open. So you are now having an issue where the operational ban has been lifted, but then you're not having your transaction consummated, because what makes schools earn is not because the gates are open, it's because the clients are coming. We need to recognize that the guidelines for resumption is just a part of the work or the work. There has to be messaging to inspire confidence for people to take that risk. The truth about it is, it's all a risk. Even when everybody says go to the clan, it's still all a risk. And that's why I said we're not speaking. Schools should not be clamoring for resumption. Schools should be finding creative means to communicate and create messaging that the parents do not feel there's a question they don't have answers. And the same thing, the ministries must begin to warm people up. So it's not just a date. See, we always give too much credence to a date. So we are resuming in 2 weeks' time, next 3 Mondays, we are resuming. The dates do not change anything. Do you get what I'm trying to say? It's the messaging behind it. Just like, for example, when it's your birthday, it's a normal day for another person. But because the message around it is happy birthday, it's your birthday, you just feel a sense of excitement. You feel you shouldn't work so much that day. You feel you deserve all the accolades that day. But guess what? It's a normal day. That's the same application for the resumption of schools. We must make resumption something worth messaging, that people would now not mind risking. We take risk every day. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? We take risk every day. But then it's because we are not seeing the face of risk. That's why we are actually going towards the face of risk. Anybody that flies in the country is taking risk. But if you now begin to check and they tell you the state of aircraft, the time they service them, you will not fly. Everybody knows that the roads are like death trap, but people travel every day. But as long as they are not seeing that, they will not think about it, right? Where your sight goes, your might goes. Where your attraction lies is where your strength follows. So we need to make people begin to see that. Unfortunately, it's not even the norm. We've not been doing that. We've been running school system on a monopolized model. You need us now. You understand? If your children will be educated, you should come to school. If you don't do WAEC, you are not literate. Do you get that kind of thing? But now,
yes,
people are announcing that a child can be out of school for more than 6 months. Not because school was on and they were not there, because everybody was at home. You know what that is? There's a messaging in that. Very subtle. Life can go on without school. And if we get in a situation and a state long enough that we are not in war, but yet life is continuing, you know what? People will now begin to see what's the fuss about too much funds going into school. Can't we just deal with literacy ourselves? And guess what? Like you said, we are resourceful tools that can make those things soft landing. So if you want to learn a new skill, you want to learn a new language, there are many experiential platforms that already exist, which are now a new alternative. So the future of school is vocation.
The future of school is vocation. Thank you very much. And I'm sure people are beginning to think of things they never thought of before. Thank you very much, sir. As we begin to wind this down, if you had the opportunity to be the Minister of Education for 1 day, 24 hours, what would you ensure you do with your time in office?
I would restructure the ministry's function in terms of the workforce and department. That's the greatest thing any regulator should do. When you get the regulators themselves regulated, every other thing will work. You understand? There's a systemic fault in the state-led and in the federal-led. And once we can bring professionalism to that, it will enable a lot of things. It will enable a lot of things.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, sir. If you could share one personal habit that you feel has contributed to what you have achieved for yourself so far, what do you think that would be, sir?
Writing things down. If you know me very well, I'm writing things down. On phone, on paper, in notepad, all around me, writing things down.
Thank you very much. So someone is taking that tip down right now. All right, if you could recommend maybe one book or one online resource for our educators out there, what would that be, sir?
One book, maybe Better Than Good by Zig Ziglar.
Better Than Good by Zig Ziglar. Thank you very much. I'm sure someone should look out for that book and get a lot of highlights and tips from that book, sir. And okay, sir, so if people needed to connect with you, find out more about what you do, and even secure your services in one way or the other, how best do you think they can do that, sir?
Well, I'm on most of these platforms. I'm on Instagram. My name is Rotimi Eyitayo. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. My email is rotimieyitayo@gmail.com. I keep it simple so that I can reach out easily. Of course, you can also get me across several platforms. I have a YouTube channel, and that's one of the best ways you can also reach out to me. I believe that once you do that, definitely we'll be able to start the conversation.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Now, on a final note, how has this pandemic affected you personally, sir?
It's affected me a lot, but not necessarily negatively. The pandemic has just made me to stop taking some things for granted. It's made me to appreciate friendship. In my work, I travel a lot, so I miss flying in the air. You know, so I had a goal of 8 countries this year.
Wow.
But it is what it is. So the pandemic has affected me in that area. But it has just made me to appreciate the value of time, space. I've done a lot more during this period. And then, of course, just the beauty to be available and accessible as opposed to when it had to be physical. It's making me work more and can be tiring at times, but you have to deliver value. You also might not start doing videos that maybe imagine me doing bread and tea or something. But we have to do what it is. We have to do it.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Now, on the final note, any last words for our viewers, sir?
Well, I think the last words would be to believe. To believe. I think we are held bound and we're held back by the fact that we don't sell to ourselves belief. And I'm not saying just faith, I'm saying belief. If a lot of people out there can just embrace that fact and believe, the things that they are toying in their head will not stay longer in the head, it will appear in their hands. And when you do that, a lot of things happen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rotimi Eyitayo. It has been such a wonderful time for the time we have shared with you. You have given us insight into many, many areas, and we are so glad you're here. And I'm sure the viewers are excited as I am as well. Once again, thank you for being on the Impact Educator Summit 2020.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Thank you for being a part of another insightful session on the Impact Educator Summit 2020 powered by Tacey Consult, where we seek actionable and practicable steps on how to steer through the pandemic and remain relevant as educators. This has been brought to you absolutely free of charge. However, if you'd like lifetime access to this session and all other sessions in this summit, register for the VIP tickets by clicking on the link below. You will also receive a more sought-after module blending low-tech and online technologies to minimize learning costs, and 20% discount on any other purchases from Tasty Consult, in addition to mouth-watering offers by our speakers and sponsors. Your feedback is valuable to us, so do so at the feedback section right at the bottom of this page, or send an email to impacteducatorsummit@hastyventures.com. We appreciate all our sponsors and partners for joining us to use education as a tool for societal transformation. Join us on the next inspiring session as we host another special guest on the Impact Educator Summit 2020.